Sarah's first impression of the old Hawthorne mansion was that of unsettling beauty. Nestled on the edge of a sleepy suburb and shrouded in creeping ivy, the sprawling Victorian home held an air of quiet dignity and something darker beneath its polished veneer. It was late October, and a chill wind rattled the windows as Sarah, a responsible but nervous 17-year-old babysitter, arrived to care for the two children of the esteemed yet distant Hawthorne family. The instructions were straightforward. Watch over the children while their parents attended a business dinner, ensure they were safe, and, above all, keep the house secure until their return. The children, Lily, 8, and Max, 6, and were quiet and polite, their wide eyes hinting at secrets of childhood, but nothing more alarming than the occasional knock at the door or the creak of floorboards in an old house. Yet from the moment Sarah stepped inside, a sense of being watched settled over her like a heavy fog. After a modest dinner and some playful board games in the parlor, the evening wore on. The children, tired from a day of rambunctious energy, were tucked into their respective bedrooms upstairs. Sarah busied herself in the living room with a book, trying to distract herself from the eerie silence that had replaced the earlier laughter. At approximately 9:15 p.m., the shrill ring of the landline shattered the quiet. Sarah frowned. The old rotary phone had rung only a handful of times before, usually for routine messages. She picked it up. On the other end, all that greeted her was a low, gravelly whisper. "Check upstairs. They're not sleeping." A chill raced down her spine. Sarah hesitated. Could it have been a prank? The voice was distorted, as if speaking through a tunnel. She ended the call, her mind churning with disbelief and unease. Yet before she could convince herself it was nothing, the phone rang again. Each successive ring brought the same message, sometimes with the slight variations. "Go upstairs, hurry! They're awake!" Or, "Don't trust the silence." At first, Sarah assumed it was a cruel joke, but as the messages became more insistent, her heart began to pound faster. Glancing at the clock, she noted that it was nearly 9:30 p.m., a time when the children should surely be asleep. Unable to shake off the disquiet, Sarah made her way up the creaking staircase. The corridor was dimly lit by the amber glow of wall sconces, and every shadow seemed to writhe in the flickering light. She paused outside Lily's room, hesitating as an inexplicable cold breeze caressed her skin. With trembling fingers, she pushed the door open. Inside, Lily lay soundly asleep, her chest rising and falling in a slow, rhythmic pattern. Relieved yet still unsettled, Sarah whispered, "It's okay. You're safe," and closed the door. Before she could proceed to Max's room, the phone in the hallway rang once more. This time, the message was more urgent, almost pleading. "They're in danger. Look behind you." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She spun around, scanning the darkened foyer. Nothing, only the oppressive silence and the echo of her own breathing. Returning upstairs, she checked Max's room. The boy was fast asleep as well, clutching his stuffed bear. The voice on the phone continued to haunt her mind. Had it been a wrong number? A twisted prank call? Her thoughts swirled with a growing dread that perhaps something was very wrong with the house. Determined to find an explanation, Sarah returned to the living room. She attempted to trace the call by checking the phone's log. The number was masked, untraceable, a string of static and silence. With her pulse quickening, she reached for her cell phone and dialed the local police. The dispatcher's calm tone provided little reassurance as Sarah recounted the bizarre events and the unnerving messages. They promised to send an officer to check the house, advising her to remain in a secure room until help arrived. While she waited, the calls persisted. The voice began to diverge from its initial warning, now uttering cryptic phrases such as, "They've been waiting," and "Find me before it's too late." Sarah's mind raced. Was it possible someone was hiding in the house? Could a deranged intruder be using the phone to torment her, or was this something else entirely? Gathering her courage, Sarah decided to investigate further. She remembered that the Hawthorne mansion was filled with secret nooks and long-forgotten spaces. Retracing her steps, she headed to the basement, a place the children rarely visited, and where the household's history was stored in dusty attics and sealed rooms. The basement was a labyrinth of storage and old furniture, lit by a single, flickering fluorescent bulb. Boxes labeled in faded ink lined the walls. As she passed a particularly heavy oak bookshelf, Sarah noticed something peculiar. A thin gap between the back of the shelf and the brick wall. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, she moved the shelf aside, revealing a narrow doorway that she was certain had never been there before. The door creaked ominously as she pushed it open. Beyond lay a small, claustrophobic room. In the center stood an antique desk, its surface cluttered with yellowed papers and an archaic telephone that looked far too new to belong among relics. A surge of icy terror ran through her as she reached out and touched the handset. It was warm, as if recently used. The sound of the phone ringing startled her, echoing in the cramped space. With a shaking hand, she picked it up. For a brief moment, all she heard was static. Then the familiar, gravelly voice whispered once again, "I warned you. I've been waiting." Sarah's blood ran cold. Who was this person? And why were they inside the house using a phone hidden away in a secret room? Clutching the handset, she retreated back into the main area of the basement. Her mind raced with possibilities. This was no mere prank. The hidden room and its clandestine telephone suggested that someone had been operating in the shadows for a long time. By now, the police had arrived. Officer Daniels, a seasoned man with a cautious demeanor, listened intently as Sarah recounted every detail. Accompanied by a small team, he began to search the mansion thoroughly. They inspected every room, every closet, and every passageway. But nothing immediately suspicious was found until one of the officers returned to the basement. In the secret room, the officer discovered old photographs, documents, and personal belongings that revealed a disturbing history. Decades earlier, the Hawthorne mansion had been under the care of a man named Gerald Mercer, a trusted caretaker who mysteriously vanished after being implicated in a series of unsettling incidents. Rumors had swirled that Mercer, reputed for his obsessive loyalty to the family, had developed a dangerous fixation. After a series of inexplicable disappearances and unexplained occurrences, he was quietly written off as a troubled man who had left the estate to escape his demons. But now, evidence suggested that Mercer had never truly left. Officer Daniels explained that Mercer had apparently hidden a secondary control center deep within the mansion, a place where he could monitor the household and, if necessary, send messages through the internal phone lines. The documents hinted at a twisted rationale. Mercer believed he was safeguarding the children from an imagined threat, one he claimed only he could confront. His warnings, however, had turned into harrowing commands that only deepened the mystery. As the officer spoke, Sarah's memory churned with the voice on the phone, its tone less malicious than angry, more desperate than threatening. Could Mercer's ghost, or perhaps a deranged man inspired by his actions, be trying to warn her of a danger unseen? The possibility that someone else might be lurking within the walls, using Mercer's technology and his secret room as a conduit, sent shivers down her spine. The night deepened, and a storm began to lash the mansion with driving rain and gusting winds. The power flickered and then died, plunging the house into darkness. In the dim light of the officers' flashlights, Sarah was ushered into a secure room in the living area as the team continued to scour the premises. Yet the phone in the secret room kept ringing, a relentless, echoing call that refused to be silenced. Unable to stand the oppressive dread any longer, Sarah excused herself once the officers promised to remain vigilant. With her heart pounding, she crept back to the basement. Clutching a small flashlight, she approached the hidden door. The persistent ringing led her deeper into the secret room, where the ancient telephone sat ominously on the desk. This time, as she picked up the receiver, the voice was different, quieter, almost remorseful. "I didn't mean to frighten you. I was trying to protect you. They are coming." Before she could ask who they were, the line went dead. Outside, the storm raged louder, as if nature itself had become a harbinger of doom. A sudden thump from upstairs made her jump. The officers' radios crackled with reports of strange sounds coming from the upper floors. Reluctantly, Sarah returned to the main floor. Officer Daniels met her in the hallway, his expression grim. "We're finding evidence of recent activity upstairs," he said quietly. "Footprints that aren't from the children, odd markings near the windows. Something or someone has been here." Before Sarah could respond, a scream echoed from the direction of Lily's room. Heart in her throat, she raced up the stairs with Daniels and 2 officers in tow. The door to Lily's room was ajar. Inside, the room was in disarray. The window wide open, curtains fluttering wildly in the wind, and Lily was nowhere to be seen. A trail of small, muddy footprints led out of the room and down the hall. Panic surged through Sarah as the team split up to search the house. In the ensuing chaos, every creak of the floor, every gust of wind, felt like the approach of something sinister. Officer Daniels radioed for backup while Sarah frantically retraced the footprints. They led her to a narrow passage behind a heavy drapery in the corridor, a passage that Sarah would have never noticed on a normal night. Inside the cramped passage, the dim beam of her flashlight revealed a hidden door. With trembling fingers, she pushed it open. Beyond lay a small, dust-choked study, its walls lined with faded letters and eerie sketches. In the center, a rusted music box lay open, its delicate tune playing slowly. A lullaby that had once soothed the children but now seemed to summon nightmares. It was here that Sarah found Lily huddled in a corner, wide-eyed and silent. As she rushed to embrace her, the soft sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor. Before anyone could react, a shadow detached itself from the darkness, a gaunt figure, its eyes reflecting the fear of a lifetime. It was not Mercer's ghost, but a man, gaunt and desperate, with wild eyes that darted nervously. Officer Daniels stepped forward, demanding identification. The man's voice was ragged, as he explained in halting whispers that he was an estranged relative, a distant cousin of the Hawthorns, who had hidden in the house for years. He confessed that he had been driven mad by loneliness and a delusional belief that the family was under threat from unseen forces. His recordings and manipulations of the phone system were intended to warn of an imminent danger he imagined was coming to claim the children, though his methods were both misguided and terrifying. In that harrowing moment, the pieces of the night fell into a grim pattern. The secret room, the eerie calls, and the cryptic warnings were all manifestations of a fractured mind, a mind that had clung to the legacy of Mercer, believing that by emulating his actions, he could protect his family. His twisted vigilante act had taken on a life of its own, infecting the very walls of the mansion with paranoia and fear. In the quiet hours before dawn, the police took the man into custody while Sarah reunited with the children. The Hawthorne parents arrived early the next morning, shocked to learn of the night's terror. Investigations revealed that the hidden room had been rigged with an old telephone line, a relic from Mercer's time, which the man had discovered and repurposed in his deranged crusade. Though the immediate threat was over, the mansion's dark legacy was far from erased. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones of strange lights and murmurs late at night, and the story of the caller inside the house soon became a local legend. Sarah, though safe now, was forever changed by that night. She learned that sometimes warnings come in the most twisted of forms, and that the line between protection and terror can be as thin as the static on an old telephone. In the months that followed, as the Hawthorne mansion underwent renovations and attempts were made to erase its haunted history, Sarah could still hear the faint echo of a voice, sometimes in the quiet of her own home, sometimes in dreams. The voice was a reminder that within the walls of every old house, secrets can linger long after the perpetrators have been gone. And sometimes those secrets reach out in desperate whispers, begging to be heard. The memory of that stormy night, the hidden room, and the sorrowful warning of a man lost in his own madness would haunt her forever. For in that night's terror, Sarah had come to understand that some calls, no matter how chilling, are meant to be answered, and that sometimes the truth lies hidden behind doors you never knew existed.